Hello, everyone. Am I live? Can everyone see and hear me okay? Okay, super. Let me turn off my phone. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. One second, and we will get started. Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon if you're in my time zone. Good morning if you're in the Western Hemisphere. Good evening if you're in Asia. Good night if you're literally on the other side of the world. I am Antonis Polemitis, and I am one of your course instructors this fall. And welcome to session 1 of MOOC 16. This is the first session, so in this session, we're also going to cover some course logistics, some introductions, some topics that are not strictly related to the material of this week. And then we'll get to the material of this week. But I want to take maybe a few minutes up front to cover some basics. First, I'm going to introduce the university. I'm going to introduce the course. Then I'll work through some of the logistics of how this course is going to operate. And then we'll get into some of your questions and see how far we get to. This session will run about 1 hour. So first of all, we are the University of Nicosia. Many of you know us, many of you may not know us. We are the largest university in Cyprus, and we think we're the largest university that teaches in English in the Mediterranean or in Southern Europe. We have about 14,500 students. Hold on 1 second. People are saying, do I really have an echo? So I don't have the video playing online. Dimitri, am I echoing? Okay, I don't have an echo. What do people mean that I'm looping? Yeah, I think it must be, all right, yeah, I think some people must have multiple tabs open because I don't think we have an echo or looping. All right, I'm going to keep going. So we are the largest university in Cyprus. We think we're the largest in Southern Europe, maybe in continental Europe, that teaches in English. We have about 14,500 students. We're a comprehensive university, so 6 schools, 20 academic departments, about 100 degree programs. And our main campus is here in Cyprus, in Nicosia, and we also have a variety of programs that we offer online through distance learning, like this one that we'll be discussing today. We are a quite young university, so our predecessor institution was only from 1980, and we only had a university title for 15 years, but we're considered by the ranking agencies among the best 200 young universities in the world. We are ranked among the top 250 in Europe, among the top 6 to 800 worldwide, which is the top 3%, top in business economics in Cyprus and Greece. And I'll come to blockchain in a little bit, but we're super proud of how rapidly the university has made it into these top tiers. And we have a general orientation towards technologies and social issues of the future. We believe that the fourth industrial revolution is a real thing, that a series of technologies from artificial intelligence and machine learning, blockchain and cryptocurrency, biotechnology, robotics, all these technologies together are going to accelerate in the coming years and decades and interact with each other in the coming years and decades. And the world is going to get very different over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And this is not just a technological issue. It's a societal issue. The technology will impact everything. It will impact business, it will impact governments, it will impact education, society, nonprofits, everything. So we think it's a very exciting time. We think if we get through this period successfully, we can actually end up in a much better world. But there will be significant challenges. And one of the big challenges is educating people. One of the big challenges is having people in a up-to-date in a way that these technologies can be used for good and not for not good. And that's kind of what we see our main role here is helping society transition to this more fourth industrial revolution type future. So in that context, let me transition to blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think we are, by most people's assessment, the leading university in the world in this topic area. We first started getting involved in 2013, where we were the first university in the world to first accept Bitcoin for tuition. And then in 2014, we ran the first iteration of this MOOC with Andreas Antonopoulos and me, which was the first university course in the world on cryptocurrency. And it was pretty exciting. We had several thousand students. It was the first time it was ever done. It was, I think, a couple of years before anyone else was in a position to offer a course. And from there, we launched that same year a master's degree, which was the first in the world. And now we have 30 to 40 faculty and staff just working on cryptocurrency and blockchain issues, teaching, research, outreach, conferences, etc. I think it's the largest team in the world by far. We've had 50,000-ish people go through this MOOC. We have this amazing alumni community. 100-something new students, 150 maybe, started the master's program this September. So we're super excited about that cohort. And we're deeply, deeply committed to this field and this space. In 2013, we thought this was something that is a foundational technology. It would change the world over the course of decades. And we still believe that. We are we have barely gotten started. We think there's another 10, 20, 30, 40 years ahead of us of how blockchains and cryptocurrency are going to impact society. And we're super excited to play an important role in that mission. Now, for you, by being here, you're still early, right? Like you're still among the earliest people in the world to get involved in the space. I think it's super exciting for you. We're delighted that you're going to join our broader community of students and alums. And so once you've Once you've come through this course, even if you don't do anything else, we consider you part of the University of Nicosia family, and we consider part of you the University of Nicosia family forever. And so some of our best friends, colleagues, partners in the field are people who we met through this MOOC over the last 8 years. And so it's really just thrilling every time we have a new group here. We meet new people, we meet them from around the world. And let me share some stats that we have on this cohort. 8,740 students enrolled, so at least filled out the form. So far, as of, I guess, yesterday, 2,880 have taken the pre-course survey. 75% of you are men, 25% are women, which is still not where I would like it to be, but it's a little bit better than last semester, when 78% were men and 22% were women. So we have some slight progress in terms of getting some gender balance in the course. 1% are under 18, 19% are 18 to 24, 33% are 25 to 34, 27% are 35 to 44, 14% are 45 to 54, and 6% are 55 plus, and I especially salute you. That's fantastic that you're still engaged in learning. We have students from 129 countries in this MOOC, which is amazing. And the top 5 countries are the United States, India, the UK, Nigeria, and Cyprus by terms of numbers of enrollment. All right, how's the MOOC going to work exactly? Every week you're going to have a weekly quiz. There's 20 multiple choice questions. It is no timeline to compete. You can keep taking it over and over. It doesn't really count your final grade. We want you to get through them. Your final grade is only calculated by the final exam, so you should take the quiz until you get it right. That's a great way to check your learning through that week's material. The final exam will be 50 multiple choice questions that you can take anywhere during the exam date periods. It's a 2-hour limit. You can only do it once, and you need to get a 60% plus score to get the MOOC Certificate of Accomplishment, which will be published, notarized on the Bitcoin blockchain as it has been since 2014. It was the first university certificate of any type notarized on the Bitcoin blockchain, and we still keep doing that. Now, that's if you're just going to take the MOOC, and that's that. If you're in the master's program, or if you plan to enroll afterwards in the master's program, you have to handle this course a little bit differently to ensure that it can count for credit for the master's, and primarily the graded activities have to be a little bit different, and this has to do with our regulatory requirements here in Cyprus. So the PowerPoints are the same, the live sessions are the same. What's different is the final examination. It is essay-based, not multiple choice. And you can also take, by the way, the multiple choice one for the certificate of accomplishment, but the one that you're needed for your grade, for your master's degree, it has to be essay-based. It's a regulatory requirement here in Cyprus. So if you're in the MSc already, I think your instructors and student advisors will help you with this. So this is mostly relevant for people who are not enrolled in the master's yet, but are thinking maybe of doing it, in which case you should get in touch sometime during this semester with either the teaching assistants or our student advisors, and see how you organize correctly so the course can count towards your master's degree. Let's talk a little bit about the master's degree, since we are here. As I mentioned, it is the first master's degree in the world focused specifically on digital currency, cryptocurrency, blockchain, these types of topics. We have, in a typical semester, a few hundred students somewhere in their course pathway on the master's degree. And each inbound class is between 50 and 150 students. So we have a fairly large one this fall that has started. And the concept of the master's degree is that you have to, you leave the master's degree with kind of a broad understanding of the space. It's a way to, let's say, think about it as, it's not exactly the right analogy, but I think it's in that direction, an MBA for cryptocurrency and blockchain, right? So it's not just about programming, or it's not just about financial services, or it's not just about regulation, just like an MBA is not just about accounting or operations or HR or strategy or finance. It's a broad program. And so you will cover some finance and economics. You will cover some technical courses of how blockchains and cryptocurrencies work. You will cover some law and regulatory topics to understand where some of these topics touch upon the regulated sphere. And the purpose of this is, when you graduate, that you are generally capable in this space, that you can go work in broadly the cryptocurrency and blockchain space and have a broad understanding of the field and be able to address the types of topics that are going to come up. Because this is a horizontal technology. And because of that, any limited view of the technology can actually get you in trouble. You know, when we first started, kind of our theory of what you always have to have a model of what you're doing in life. And our mental model was, in kind of 2014, there's a group of people in the financial world who knew a lot about the financial world and knew about how like financial applications worked, and all thought Bitcoin was some type of weird bubble tulip scam for drug dealers or something. And that was obviously wrong. But also there were folks who were highly involved in Bitcoin, and that's wonderful. But a lot of them were off to go reinvent the wheel on like several hundred years of financial system developments. And there's kind of no reason to do that. Like, certain things are known. You can just go study how they were done before and copy them, right? Like, you don't need to reinvent everything from scratch. An exchange should separate, order matching from custody is a good idea, right? Like, so the certain things you can just learn from the past. So that's how we started. And as the space has evolved, the program has also evolved. But it keeps this broad view of the space. And part of what is an interesting and exciting challenge and opportunity for us, the field is broadening itself, right? When we started, it was Bitcoin. Then along the way, we added Ethereum and a variety of other smart contract platforms. And then, kind of last year-ish, DeFi showed up and kind of answered a lot of questions about how we are going to implement certain financial applications with cryptocurrency. For a while I used to teach DFIN 513 on this program, which was like, open financial systems. How do you actually implement an exchange using crypto? And I remember in the early years, in 2014, 2015, it was not obvious. You kind of knew it was going to happen, but how it was going to happen in any practical sense was unknown. And of course it was unknown. That's why we didn't have DeFi in 2014. But then you got automated market makers and that whole area of DeFi, and now you can actually see how that space is evolving. And then over the last, let's say, 6 months, we have seen an absolute explosion of innovation in the NFT space, the non-fungible token space. I think it is the most fascinating area in crypto right now. I think it will have a huge societal impact. It's not for today's session. We got to start with the basics because these things build on one another, right? Like Ethereum is different than Bitcoin, but you probably can't quite grok Ethereum without first understanding Bitcoin. And DeFi, you probably first need to understand Ethereum to understand DeFi. And NFTs are that way too. You probably have to understand Ethereum to understand how NFTs have been implemented. So we're starting today at the basics, and we'll work our way up the chain, but it's just an amazing space. I think there is going to be, for those who orient their career in this direction, I think it's a very good bet. What I see in my role is a lot of people want to hire people with crypto and blockchain expertise, and they can't find them. And this is true for crypto companies. It's also true for traditional firms. And so the model of either I'm going to go work in crypto native firms, or I work in an accounting firm or a law firm or a Securities and Exchange Commission or a big business, or now with NFTs, a consumer product company. And they need someone who understands crypto or blockchains. It's a great, great, great career play. I mean, just an amazing career play. It's also a super exciting space. I think it will change the world, and I think it will change the world for good. I believe it will generally decentralize the world, and generally, decentralization is good. Now, you might say, like, are there good and bad in every technology? Of course, there's good and bad in everything, right? Like, everything. Fire has good and bad in it, right? Like, it got us out of caves, but occasionally burns down forests. But I am pro-decentralization as a general concept, and I do believe crypto will help tremendously there. Now, last piece on course logistics, we have 12 sessions. I am teaching the first one. Then I am handing it over to my good friend and colleague, Antonis, who will teach the next few sessions. Then Professor George Yaglis and I will switch off the last few sessions. Professor Yaglis has been with us since the beginning, helping set up the program in 2014. He heads the Institute for the Future, which is where we hold all our research and development activities in this field at the University of Nicosia, and he's a great guy. And then Dimitris Tseas, who you see in the chat, is helping us run the course logistics, as he has for several semesters now. And so if you need anything, I would go to Dimitris first. He is very responsive, and you'll find him easier than you will find some of the rest of us, I suspect. And then he can help make sure your request gets the right place. I am not a full-time instructor. My role here at the university, I am the Chief Executive Officer of the university, which means I'm responsible for the administrative operations of the university and the financial operations of the university. We have an elected academic side. And my background is, professionally before here, was in New York City and Manhattan, and private equity and strategy consultancy and some technology and financial services. So I am one of those who came from the more traditional system, and in 2013, I was kind of hit by lightning on the first time I used Bitcoin and said, wow, this is amazing, this is going to change the world. And so I have been deep in the rabbit hole since then, and there's kind of no way out. I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper. I love it. It's amazing. It is absolutely going to change the world. So those are the intro topics. Hopefully that covers most questions for most people. But you have the chat, you have the forum, you have emails, you have student advisors, you have Dimitris. As you have questions, please let them know. I would also like to make an extra special welcome to our first on-campus master's students. This is something we're doing for the first time this year. We're super excited about this as well. I think there's about 15 or 17 of them who will be here on campus in the same master's program, but just delivered on campus. And we love online. We love the opportunity it gives us to work with students and faculty around the world. But I also think there's something nice about seeing some of you around here on campus, and so welcome to those. Okay, let's go to the topics at hand, and I'm going to start with the main one, which is, it's what always comes up this first session, which is the functions of money. And they are three of them: medium of exchange and store of value and unit of account. And you guys did a survey, and let's see what the survey said. So 59% said it was a store of value. 35% said Bitcoin is a medium of exchange. 4% said it's a unit of account. And 2% said none of the above. And it's interesting to go back. So I have the numbers here for fall 2019 that Dimitris pulled together, where the data has changed a little bit. So in 2019, 43% said it was a store of value versus 59% today. 47% said it's a medium of exchange versus 35% today. And 8% said it's a unit of account versus 4% today. And I believe the trends in the survey actually reflect a lot of the practical changes that have happened in the marketplace. If I go all the way back to 2013, the initial narrative was also very heavily related to medium of exchange. And for a variety of reasons, some of them tax reasons in the United States that every transaction creates a taxable event, and the fact that the price kept going up. I do believe the medium of exchange usage has been a little bit in the background for some years. It might come back later with Lightning, I don't know. It might come back later with jurisdictions that don't treat every microtransaction as taxable. I don't know. But definitely as kind of base layer Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, I think it's fair to say has not been the primary usage case. On the other hand, the digital gold store of value narrative has become quite powerful in Bitcoin. And this is one of those where it causes all types of heartburn to traditional systems people, because they say, well, store of value, you want something stable. And the one thing to note about the price of Bitcoin is that it is in fact not at all stable. Never has been. I don't know if it ever will be, but it's certainly not right now. The volatility has decreased. If you look at the measures of volatility, they have decreased. And you're right, it's not stable, but it's so far it's been unstable and upward sloping. And so for people who have held for a long enough time, it's not a store of value in that it keeps the value flat, but it has been in practice a store of value that has gone like this. And so what does that mean? I don't know what it means, but I think it does mean that a lot of people use it as a form of investment, which is somehow related to the store of value, in which case maybe it's somehow different. I think it's fair to say it's not a unit of account. I have yet to go in my day-to-day life and buy a TV for whatever point 0.05 BTC. It's interesting. The first unit of account crypto usage I have seen, and I think it is real, is the unit of account for NFTs appears to be Ether. From the time I've spent in the NFT space, I do believe people price, buy, trade, value NFTs not in dollars or euros or yen or won. They value them in Ether. And if you look at how the exchanges price them, if you look at how the buys and sells are reported on Twitter, if you look at the sales bots in that space, they're all Ether-based. And so that's super interesting. Now there's some that are on Tezos and Solana, but most of the field right now is on, most NFTs are on Ethereum. And so that's really interesting to me, because there, Ether is for sure a unit of account. It is also a medium of exchange. And, some Ether proponents are trying to push it as a store of value, which I don't know if that narrative, the whole ultrasound money narrative. I don't know if that's going to be the case. We'll see. But it absolutely is a unit of account and a medium of exchange when it comes to NFTs. And so that's really interesting. So, I think the state of the world right now is Bitcoin is viewed primarily as a store of value. And there's latently this question of where will it be? How will it play out as a medium of exchange? And then Ether is a unit of account for NFTs and a medium of exchange for NFTs. And we will see how that plays out in other chains, other level one competing chains like, Tezos or Solana or BNB is trying to do it as well. So it's interesting. They are proto currencies in a way. They're kind of proto commodities or commodity based money, something like that, I think is the case. I also think it is important not to get too hung up on the specifics here, right? Like one of the issues that I see with traditional system folks is the following. They say, well, in my view, the euro works this way. And it works in the way that it works, and it's useful for it to work in the way that it works. And then they look at Bitcoin and say, well, Bitcoin isn't like this, so it's no good. It must be valueless. It must be worthless. And those two things don't, one of them doesn't lead from the other one, right? They don't have anything to do with each other. A lot of the editorials I see from central bankers evaluate Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe they don't really get much further than that, from under the framework of, would this work right now as a national fiat currency, where it is the unit of account and the medium of exchange? It's kind of, they're specifically not targeting fiat currencies to be stores of value. Right? That's, when someone says, as is the case, the we have a 2% inflation objective. As the United States, it is an objective to make it a not store of value. It's not like some big conspiracy that you have to discover on like Bitcoin Twitter. It's literally the stated policy of the government and of the Federal Reserve in this case. And there's a reason for it, right? Like in the framework of kind of Keynesian economics, you're very afraid of deflation because deflation can get you into a spiral of less production and less actual creation of goods and services in the economy. On the other hand, and so they're specifically saying, it's not like they're tricking you and saying, oh, well, expect your dollars to go up in value and secretly in the background we're printing more. They're saying, no, we're going to print more. We want them to go down a little bit in value. We want you to spend them. We want you to spend your dollars on goods and services to keep the economy moving, right? And I think it's a valid choice. Whether it makes sense or not for holding dollars is a different question, right? Like, it's a valid choice for a central bank. And so a lot of central bankers look at this and say, well, I want price stability broadly, slightly inflationary. I want a unit of account. I want a medium of exchange. I can't have it bouncing up and down like 10% a day, like crypto tends to. So this thing's pointless. It's stupid. It doesn't work. Like, what's wrong with these people? This must be some type of dream. And just it's wrong, right? Like, no one's saying that the European Central Bank should eliminate the euro and use Bitcoin. I mean, some people are saying it, but like, I don't think that's a great idea, right? Like, but it doesn't mean that if it's doesn't operate like a fiat national currency, like a sovereign currency, that it doesn't have a use. And I think that part's clear now. When we started, I don't know, the total market cap was in the low billions, 20 billion, something of crypto. We need to check this. We should check the 2013 data on this. And now we're in the several trillions, and I don't think it's actually going to stop. I think crypto will, as a asset class, by the end of the decade, be a 10 trillion plus asset class, and across all types of ledgers. And everything's going to win, right? Like, it's not going to be as much as maxis like to, on all sides, like to think it's going to be only Bitcoin or only Ethereum. And I guess we're now just starting to get some Solana maxis, and maybe later on some Avalanche maxis or something. I don't know. But like, it's obviously going to be a multi-chain world. Like, Bitcoin is going to do its thing. Ethereum is going to do its thing. Solana and Avalanche might do some things of their own to be determined. I mean, the two sure things so far are Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think, have crossed the chasm of, being viable chains. The other ones still yet to be determined. I think NFTs will have a role and will be an asset class of their own that's different than the underlying fungible tokens. And I think the space is going to be a very large one, and as difficult and painful it is for people who can't fit it into some easy bucket of the existing system because these things are different. Right? Like, is Bitcoin a money? Yeah, kind of. Is it currency? Yeah, kind of. Is it a commodity? Yeah, kind of. Is it a payment network? Yeah, kind of. Is it a programmable system? Yeah, kind of. It's kind of like all those things, right? So it doesn't fit in very well to those things. I see. The inevitable Cardano, the Cardano comment. Yeah, maybe. I don't quite understand Cardano, but maybe. I don't know. So maybe Cardano. You'll have level 2s and side chains and so on. So like there'll be a lot of innovation. I think the space will continue to grow. And I think we use frameworks from the non-crypto world for analytical purposes, not to help us understand things better, not to try and fit things exactly perfectly into the pre-crypto boxes, because I don't think they fit perfectly. I mean, you see those NFTs, like, are they art? Yeah, that part's clear. But are they also kind of digitally programmable, transportable, composable art? Yeah, also that. That part's different, right? That's quite different than the painting I have sitting my wall there, right? Like, it's cool, I like it, but it's not composable, and I can't like get out a hardware wallet and send it to you around the world, right? So, I mean, this has its value also. It can be on my wall, but it's still quite different. So this, I think the team poll, the student poll, has gotten the functions of money as it relates to Bitcoin kind of broadly correctly. Let's see some of the comments. Yeah, it hasn't yet to prove its store of value credentials. I mean, yeah, it all depends how you look at it, right? Like, on the one hand, some people will say, well, look, it goes up and down. How can you really rely on it? And the other people say, oh, great, I'm up 100x. I feel my value has been stored quite successfully. So both are right, and neither one's wrong, I don't think. Someone asked, well, why is it or can't it be both? And it can be both. Some of them can be all three. Digital gold, yeah. Here's a very interesting point. Is it possible that Bitcoin's main utility will not be as currency at the retail level or as a store of value for those looking for wealth creation, but rather as a settlement tool for companies and governments? I do believe this is a very interesting discussion and maybe a real possibility where the primary use of the Bitcoin base layer, leaving aside whether it's a store of value, but the primary transactional use will be that it's a high value settlement layer. And this is interesting because this is kind of how the existing system works, right? The existing system, when you use a credit card and you swipe it and it's instant payment, it's because you're in a level 3. You're not a level 1. Level 1 is the base layer, right? Bitcoin, right? Or Ethereum. And level 2 are things that people are working on now that use the base layer for security and then say are faster and maybe have less security but are faster. Well, your credit card transactions are level 3. That's why it's instant. The actual settlement happens several days later. So when people say, well, look, technology is terrible. I mean, I use my credit card and my credit card clears in an instant, and Bitcoin takes 10 to 60 minutes. Well, they're not comparing like to like. In 10 to 60 minutes, Bitcoin has done full and complete irrevocable settlement. That takes between 3 and 30 days in the traditional system. What you're doing is you have a contractual obligation being created at the time of the credit card transaction, but you're not actually settling them. And so this idea that there might be a variety of transactions that happen at derived chains, level 2 or level 3, and what the base layer is used for, where transactions are expensive, but they can also be big because there's a lot of value embedded in the base layer, is that they're used for settlement, and that they're used for settlement for large transactions, and they're used for settlement for machine-to-machine transactions. And so I think that's a potentially interesting pathway that some of these chains develop. And it's a potentially interesting pathway on the topic of fees, right? Like the base layer fees for Bitcoin and Ethereum are expensive. But they're expensive because you're buying a lot of security in those fees. You're buying a lot of redundancy. You're buying a lot of certainty and decentralization and security that your transaction won't be reversed. So that might make sense if you're transferring $500 million. It also might make sense if you're buying a, $1 million NFT. If you're buying $1 million NFT, maybe it's worth it to spend $50 to have the strongest security assurances you can buy that it's transferred, it won't be reversed, it's decentralized, what have you. If you're buying that famous $3 cup of coffee, do you need to spend $50 on security? No, of course not. Right? You need to spend like tenth of a penny on security. You don't have very much risk. The store doesn't have very much risk. What's the big deal? So these, to the degree that crypto is used as a medium of exchange for the cup of coffee, I believe it will not be at the base layer, or at least it won't be at the base layer of any of the types of base layers we're talking about now. It can be at a layer that has a lower security assurance, because who cares? Like, what's the big risk anyone's taking buying a coffee? And so it can have the type of security assurances you have in the real world with your credit cards, which are the transactions are reversible. That's why they can be fast, because they're reversible. So I think this settlement idea is a very, very interesting idea. El Salvador. In early September, Bitcoin was adopted as legal tender in El Salvador. How do you think that makes, and then Ukraine followed the same steps, a little bit different. Like in El Salvador, you're required to accept Bitcoin, if I understand it correctly, with some transition period. How do you think this will impact the economies for these countries, since Bitcoin is more a store of value than a medium of exchange? The El Salvador experiment is going to be super interesting. There are some people who complain about how it's been implemented, or say, like, it's not perhaps the most democratic regime, and I don't have an opinion that might be true, might not be, I don't know. I have not studied the government system in El Salvador very much. But it is interesting to see this type of test. And specifically, if you look at their statements, what they're really pushing mostly for is reducing the cost of remittances. El Salvador has an economy that is highly dependent on remittances, and their fees on remittances are quite high. And so one of the economic benefits that supposedly El Salvador is trying to get out of this is, can they reduce the cost of remittances by using Lightning Network, so they're using a level 2, and putting some government infrastructure in place to help. They're telling people in El Salvador, you don't have to take the price risk of Bitcoin. We'll convert it back for you. But maybe this is a cheaper way to do remittances, maybe payments, but I think it's really remittances at play there. Man, that's an interesting question. Remittance fees are a measurable percentage of El Salvadorian GDP. So it's a country that does have a potential economic rationale for doing what they're doing. Now, how it plays out, it's a vast experiment. It's very tricky. I worry about the implementation. I worry about training. I've been teaching this topic for a very long time, and I am not totally convinced that even after going through this course, too many people could actually start setting up themselves to set up transaction processing on the Lightning Network. So I do believe there will be significant implementation challenges, and so, but that's how we'll learn. To the question in the chat, no, I don't believe Cyprus will be following El Salvador anytime soon. The European Union is the European Central Bank is relatively unfriendly towards crypto. Now, officially they say, use it at your own risk and so on. But they're relatively unfriendly. The national central banks tend to be very, very cautious on this topic. I think there is now work being done by the ECB to create a digital euro, a CBDC, central bank digital currency euro, that will be more permissioned, but will have some of the characteristics of cryptocurrencies. And so it would be an interesting evolution. And I don't think Cyprus is going to require businesses to accept crypto anytime soon. Is Bitcoin really highly fungible? At the fully transparent ledger, are there tainted Bitcoins? They've been used. Have they been used in illegal activities, and maybe will they have a lower value than clean Bitcoins? I don't know. I mean, it has been a concern since the beginning, this topic. It's been a concern since the beginning that certain Bitcoins will be flagged, and then you'll start breaking the fungibility of Bitcoin. So far, I don't think it's become a serious issue. So I don't know if it's going to be a serious issue later, but so far, I'm not too worried about it. All right, barter-related questions. The myth of barter. This is good. I'm just going to read this. A typical history of money says early societies were barter economies, and that currency was developed to resolve the double coincidence of wants problem. However, David Graeber in his book Debt, The First 5,000 Years, challenges this narrative, calling it the myth of barter. His argument is that there is no empirical evidence for this myth, no observations of primitive societies supporting the notion of barter economies. It's simply a fantasy of economists. Rather, primitive economies were largely based on mutual aid and obligations, that is, debts. Thus, in a sense, debt in the form of obligations precedes the existence of currency. To what degree is the common history of money a myth? And what's the significance of records, oral, memory-based, of debt obligations preceding the existence of currency? So, it's an interesting question. It's one of the great debates always on this topic, not just in this course, in general. I'm not sure they're actually that different, right? Like I always try and imagine these topics under, it's all right, I'm in a village, and there's 200 people of us in the village. And, all right, so what's one of these theorists saying? Oh, we're bartering. I'm going to give you eggs, you're going to give me olives. That's barter. Okay. Sounds plausible. And then someone else might say, no, that's not how it works. Listen, you guys are imagining things. There's no records that Antonis gave eggs to Maria and she gave him olives. Well, I'm not exactly sure why there would be a record of this, but okay, let's hold that thought. What's actually the case, everyone's helping each other. It's okay, what does that mean? What I think it means is like, I'm giving you eggs because I have extra eggs. And then later you're giving me olives because you owe me or something. It's not clear to me that those two scenarios are that much different, right? Like at the level of a village, debt obligations and barter are not, they don't strike me as, and I know this might not be what the official theorists on this topic believe, right? Because they write whole books saying the other guys are wrong. But I just try and think how lived life would be. And, Cyprus is fairly developed now, but there's still some small villages. And I kind of try to imagine myself in one of those villages and say like, all right, well, okay, are those things that different? I mean, one thing that's very different is like if you have an official currency issued by some type of central authority figure in the country, a king, an emperor, or a central banker, yeah, that's different. If you don't have that, how does kind of everyone get through the year? And you probably need both eggs and olives to get through the year, and someone's out with olive trees and someone's handling the eggs. Okay, I don't know that these distinctions are hugely important, right? I think the important distinction is when you go from a relatively informal system to a system that is abstract, horizontal, like early currency, coins, and later notes, and that is a big mental leap, right? Then you don't need kind of mutual aid obligation debts. You don't need bartering. You have that piece of paper, and that piece of paper gives you a claim on societal resources. So that's a pretty big leap. And then, so like the leap of having physical coinage is a leap. The leap of having paper money is a leap. The leap of having, decentralized digital currency is a pretty big leap. It's another big leap. And it's a leap that is quite hard for people to process. I suspect the paper money leap was kind of like that, right? And you can see how it happened, right? Like, it's annoying to carry gold around. Someone might steal it for you. And then all right, you put it in the repository, and you get a piece of paper saying you own this gold. And so you trade the piece of paper. And then at some point, you're like, well, let's trade the paper. Why don't you go through all this? And I can see that being a tough leap for people because wait, this is just a piece of paper, right? The other thing was gold. It has utility. I can turn to jewelry. I can whatever. Then this is just a piece of paper. It's literally a piece of paper. Right? Okay, that's true. But most of the value of gold is not its utility. Most of the value of gold is that it can be used as a medium of exchange and store of value, and maybe in some context a unit of account. And that's what mostly driving its value. And then the piece of paper is all of that value of gold minus the utility value of the gold. And then Bitcoin is all of the value of the piece of paper minus the piece of paper. And it's a tough leap, right? It's a tough leap. It's a tough leap all around where, but how can this be real? How can this mean anything? And many of these things are social construction, and that really, a lot of these things work because we all agree that they work. And if you're on the Yap Islands and your rice stones, we agree that the rice stones are how you or somewhere you're using seashells, okay, and because you're using gold, so you're remembering who owes you a goat, or you're using euros or using bitcoins. It is disconcerting to people how much of that is social convention. It's disconcerting because you spend all day thinking about money, right? All day. You come to work to make money. You have to pay your mortgage. You want to go on vacation. You check your bank balance. You need to buy lunch. It's everywhere, right? It's how we get through our day. And so once you start saying, it's kind of made up, right? It's all kind of made up. And people start getting weak in the knees. But it's kind of made up. And I don't say it in a bad sense. These are social coordination mechanisms. They are ways to keep track of who has what claims on which societal resources. Right? That's what the stuff's all about. And they carry along information with them. Right? Part of what they're doing is, one of the big mental breakthroughs of capitalism is not that it's a better system because it's a fairer, better system. It's a better system because it's better at transmitting information about which things are useful for people to do and which things are not useful for people to do. And it's a better information processing system. And the way it transmits that information is through prices as measured in money. Right? If I make a really attractive restaurant and people are willing to pay a lot of money for it, then I am using societal resources, the building, the ingredients, the staff well. And if nobody comes to my restaurant and nobody wants to pay money to it, you don't need to know if I'm like good at restauranteering in kind of an abstract sense. The practical sense is that, I might not even have a bad restaurant. Maybe I've made an elite sushi restaurant in the middle of Nicosia and no one's going to come to it. And maybe that would work wonderfully in Tokyo. All I know is if no one's buying my food and the money's not coming in, the prices can't hold on to, well, in that specific context, I am not using societal resources effectively, right? Because there is information coming along with whether people are buying or not buying. And so it's super interesting. It's super hard for people. I've been doing this a very, very long time. It's super hard for people, right? I think the Bitcoin maxis, there's kind of different versions of maxis, right? Like, I'm a Bitcoin decentralization maxi. I think the single most important thing about Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. There's another flavor of Bitcoin maxis that I call them inflation maxis. And the single most important thing about Bitcoin is that governments print money and then the dollar is going to get devalued. There's nothing backing it. It's just fiat. Okay. I don't think that matters so much. It's not like it's some big surprise. It's not like someone is telling you, you thought when you got your dollar that it also came with an ounce of gold and now it doesn't. It's just a social convention. That's all it is. And that social convention is explicitly designed so you spend it. It is true if you just held dollars as a long-term investment, you will not keep up with inflation. That's also kind of stupid. Why would you do that? Never heard a single piece of investment advice that said what you should invest in is cash, ever. So it's true, if you use dollars in the way that they're not intended to be used, they are bad for the usage case that they're not intended to be used for. But it's the same type of error as people saying, well, Bitcoin's no good because it's not a stable unit of account. I'm not sure Bitcoin has been designed at this stage to be a stable unit of account, right? And so it's important to have multiple frameworks on these things. There's no right answer. And I think one of the things, I read all your comments, and you just put them together for me. And these are all good questions, and they're all good comments. But there's also no exact right answer. You should think of them as lenses, as frameworks, as ways to look at the topic and see if they help you understand things. Can I take this lens, let's say, kind of reading glasses lens, and it magnifies things? Yeah, that's one lens. Great, let's put it down. Can I have this other lens that's good at a distance? Yeah, let's use this one. Can I have this other one that's like a zoom lens of a camera and I can see the far distance? Great, also a lens. There are different lenses and you should use them as you can to improve your own analytical capacity. And that's what we're going to try and leave you with this semester. Particularly more, Andreas is going to take you more into the technical details on how things work. And so that's really important because you got to get your hands dirty, and you can't understand Bitcoin without touching a Bitcoin transaction. You can't understand Ethereum without doing things on Ethereum. You can't understand DeFi without going to Uniswap or SushiSwap. You can't understand NFTs without going to OpenSea and buying one and selling one. You just can't. You got to do it. So you should do that. All of those kind of practical hands-on things with Andreas. And then with me, where I'm talking about more not the actual underlying cryptocurrency, but its interaction with society, I'm going to try and leave you with frameworks on how to think through this. So I ran a little bit over, so I want to try and keep myself to the time allotted. I want to thank you all for joining. I'm super excited to see this group. I'm loving the chat. I'm seeing what's going on in the chat. And so I'm loving all the excitement in the chat. We'll get back to you, as Dimitri says, on, maybe we can incorporate some other chat mechanisms besides the forum. So we'll come back to this. And I'm super excited in going through this semester with you guys. So welcome again to the University of Nicosia family, and we're delighted to have you.